Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Tonight, we're going to have a fantastic group of people join us for their book, The Future of Black. It is an anthology of poems and art exploring Afrofuturism, science fiction, and speculative fiction by Black writers and writers of color. So, my name is Cecily. I am the events assistant for Busboys and Poets, and I'm very happy to introduce everyone today. We have Len Lawson, Terry Ellen Cross, Cynthia Manick, and Syed Agastini. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we are going to start today off with Len and Cynthia's discussion, and then everyone will join in. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Glad you're joining us for discussion, conversation, perhaps reading from our recent anthology, The Future of Black, Afrofuturism, Black comics, and superhero poetry that Cynthia is displaying for us. So first, Cynthia, myself, and Gary Jackson, who's not with us, are the co-editors of this anthology. So we wanted to discuss a little bit of what it is about, its origins, and hopefully how you can get one of your own if you don't already have one. We've been working on this for the last 2 years over the pandemic, and everything that we put together, we did remotely. So we never met in person because we all live in different places about the country. And mainly we wanted to have a group of poems that spoke to the Afrofuturism movement that was really exploding late last decade, which is funny to say, but that really got a shot in the arm with the Black Panther film. But those aren't just the origins, of course, of Afrofuturism work, but it was just really interesting to see people gravitate towards it, especially Black people flocking to the movie theaters, dressed in African garb, kente cloth, you name it.
Full regatta. And buying more comic books again. People are going back to the stores and ordering comic books because
it was just amazing.
New
and probably hadn't been done to that magnitude of in my lifetime. I don't remember seeing anything like that where it was like a family reunion at the movies. It was like people were
generational
dances.
You had old, you had older, you had them the earrings. They were all excited to be there, and it's all about conversation too. They're excited to be in the presence of each other, in the presence of thinking about an alternate world that people could inhabit. It was a very exciting time, I think, for all of us.
Yeah. So essentially, we started looking to, not only of course are there graphic novels, there are films that are Afrofuturistic. We wanted to know what poetry had to say about this whole movement, and not just with Black superheroes and Black comics, which we all love, but also just the greater culture and philosophy of what Afrofuturism means to poets and writers that we admire and those that we want to discover. So we sent out a call for submissions for that, and got some amazing work from poets that you probably know and love, and also from some emerging writers that really have something to say about all of this. So it was really interesting to curate all of that work. So Cynthia, would you like to tell everyone about your experience with working behind the scenes on this, and what it means to you to have the book in your hands after it was released?
I know. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. Well, a couple of things. Number one, I always think of Afrofuturism as, living your best Black life. So I always want to think about how we can imagine ourselves succeeding. How can we imagine ourselves failing with style? How can we imagine ourselves loving, having life, having all these moments, and having being in literature. I think Gwendolyn Brooks is probably one of the first Black poets to really put family, Black life in poetry. And I think these poems are sort of following that tradition. Also, we also have these weird poems we all write that don't get published. We have our favorite poems that, we stick them in the book. They don't get published, but we love them. I call them B cuts. And so I love discovering all these B cuts by all these poets who I knew. I was like, oh, why is this poem about the Flash not more popular? It's about the Flash. How can we get these things all in one collection? How can we see these B cuts, elevate them up to A status? Because they deserve it. And also, I really like thinking about anthologies. I think we have an oral tradition of telling stories and collecting memories. And I think this anthology is a nice way to do that. It's a nice way to introduce people to literature, to poetry, to comics, and to do some idea that their thoughts and their vision of the future has a place in canon. So I enjoyed that process of sort of curating how that vision can look like, and I'm curating that pathway of information. It was very cool for me to do. And working with you guys, working with you and Gary, who know all the comic book stuff. And I'm more of a poetry person, but you guys really are in like the heart of comic book land. So I know that the poems I would stare toward you, you were like, yes, you were like, no. So you had good reason. So I like that. I like that the collaboration process, we all play to our strengths. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is Gary and I are like the geeks, the nerds, the weirdos.
Well, no. I can nerd out the best of them. I'm just saying that sometimes I'm more poetry focused, and we need the balance. And I think this book is a good way of balancing that. Balancing Lucille Clifton with a poem about Pokemon. I think I like that these two worlds are colliding, but it's colliding seamlessly. Yeah.
Did you have like a favorite, not necessarily a comic, but like a favorite type of hero person that that wanted to be like, idolized in your childhood or maybe
about
in your life?
Aurora Storm. I talked about Storm in the intro of the book because, come on, this Black lady control the weather. This is what we need in our lives. This is what we need in our lives. And to have that much power and also have power with grace is what I really, really like about that. Because usually in film and TV, Black people are always loud and aggressive. They're always portrayed as too much. And Aurora was just the right amount of everything she needed to be. So I love that about her, that she had power. She didn't use it flimsily. She used it when she needed to use it. So I love Aurora, X-Men cartoon, original Jubilee. I was like, oh, yeah. That was my first introduction. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you? What were your favorites? What inspired you to sort of want to write about comics, to write about futurism?
Yeah. Where do I start? I was born in a small that's
too far back.
Too far back in the way back. I need to turn it down a little bit. No, I mean, I just grew up watching superhero cartoons, movies. I wasn't like deep in the comics like Gary, but I was aware of them because I had friends who were. So I knew just enough to be dangerous as far as like the comics, just enough in case somebody
to be dangerous.
Asked me about it,
You should quote that.
No, just enough to be dangerous. But Storm is definitely like in my top 5, of course. I don't know why, but I just gravitated toward Iceman for some reason, because just the way that, and I'll preface it by saying not the one in the movies, because he's kind of lame to me, but he was the guy in the series and also in the comics was like this older, like not middle aged, but like he's this young guy, but not like a teenager, but still, but just the way that the possibilities are kind of endless when you talk about water and you talk about ice and you talk about like manipulating it and the things that it could do. I think that was wild. Kind of the same reason people like Spider-Man, because he can do so many things with like his webs, I think. Same reason, but you know, that's just my pick. Of course, you know, fight me on this if you want, but you know, talk to me on like Twitter or whatever. But Batman is the greatest of all time, and you know, I will stand on that until the grave. You know, so
hey, I'm not gonna touch that one. I'm not gonna touch that one.
I wouldn't, because.
But I will say, when I think of the original movie superheroes, I think of Blade. Wesley Snipes really brought us into the mix. Before Wesley and Blade, we didn't really have. I mean, we had the X-Men, but we didn't really have like the Afrofuturistic sort of person on screen. I think Wesley Snipes really started us off. He started us off.
Yeah. And then of course it's getting a reboot as well with Mahershala Ali. So
my husband.
I like how they
Fight me if you wanna. My husband. Fight me if you wanna.
He's got kind of a I don't know if you've seen his latest Swan Song, but it's kind of like an Afrofuturistic premise to that film as well, which is kind of cool. So I checked it out. You know, it was decent. If you want to check that out. But so what are some things about the anthology that you really love that you think people will really like?
Ooh, I want to say everything. We can't say that, right? Okay,
you can say everything, but
everything.
Say, for example,
every poem here is fantastic. I will also say the artwork. I like that we've managed to meld mediums. We have artwork, we have poetry. I mean, I think, and it's in full color at that. So kudos to Blair for doing it in full color. We really appreciate you. This is artwork that is, so you're having two experiences when you read this book. Having poetic experience and you're having a visual experience. So I love that part of it. Secondly, I love that at the end of the book, we have resources of how this book relates to others. So if you want to do a syllabus for your university or for your class, we have short story collections listed. We have novels, we have comics, we have scholarly works of criticism. So this book will be a conversation for anything that you need to sort of push Afrofuturism forward. And lastly, I actually just really like the topics. I like how we broke down the table of contents. So you have like New Origins, you have Black pop culture, you have Black history, you have, Black anti-heroes. So I like that we are not a monolith. Even its imagination, it's varied. What about you, Lynn?
I love that we were able to include the works of people over like different generations. And when you think Afrofuturism, it's got to be like, young people or just, people who love comics or things like that. What we found was that poets that we loved were already writing or doing this work, but there hasn't just been like an anthology to say that, okay, this is a genre, right? This is a category that, we can get into. Gary is renowned for his first book of poems, Missing You, Metropolis, which delves into all of the superhero characters in his poems. But also you have poems by Lucille Clifton writing about Superman. Of course, Tracy K. Smith, her poems from Life on Mars, Yona Harvey, Avan Jordan. They're all speaking about these same things. And then I think it all goes back to this theme of like flight and escape for Black people when we are, pushed into a corner, oppressed, suppressed, not given our rights, not seeing ourselves as being free in this white male-dominated society, et cetera, the patriarchy. So I think it's interesting that throughout African-American poetry in this, contemporary period, that seems to be a theme that they all go back to, So we were able to find these and put them all together. And I think people will be surprised and say, oh, look at, so-and-so has a poem in here, right?
Yeah.
Like earlier. So We do.
Wait, is there a poem in here that surprised you? Because I always think of poetry as asking questions. So is there a poem in here that you thought, that's a good question. That's a good answer.
That is a perfect segue to bringing Saida in. You've done this before, haven't you?
Welcome, Syed.
Hey, folks.
Hey.
Welcome, Syed Agastini. I feel like I should read your bio from the.
You're talented. You should.
So that others will get to know you. Syed Agastini is a queer Afro-Guyanese poet whose work explores the ways that Black folks harness mythology to enter the fantastic. Saida's poetry can be found in Barrel House magazine, Hobart Pulp, Plume, and other publications. Her first collection of poems, Let the Dead In, was a finalist for the 2020 New Issues Poetry Prize, which will be released by Allen Squire Publishing in spring 2022. So that's this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A Kaveh graduate, Saida has been awarded honors and support for her work by the Watering Hole, shout out to Watering Hole, Blue Mountain Center, as well as a 2018 Ruby's Grant. All right. So welcome again. And to Cynthia's question, your poem was like, when we were looking at submissions, was like one of those that really just like opened my eyes, because it's about Queen and Slim, the film that came out a few years ago, and you know, which was really controversial, especially the ending. So when I read the poem, I kind of felt like, you know, like with DVDs back in the day when we used to like watch movies. Children.
Real far back. Yes.
Back in the olden days, they used to have like the alternative endings part where you could click on and see another ending of the film. And I think people were sort of like let down and say, well, you know, they didn't want to see the way it ended because it just didn't see them winning or whatever. But I think the director Lena Waithe said something like, well, it's basically a reality, like, you know. But I like the way your poem imagines what could happen to them and what would happen to them. Maybe in like a multiverse, since we're talking about comics, you know, what could possibly do that. So speak about that and just, you know, what led you to write about this on your own.
Sure.
Can you read the poem, Saida? Would you mind reading it?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm happy to.
Thank you. Then after that, we can sort of delve into it so you can know what we're talking about.
Sure. The ending where Queen and Slim lives. Quite simply, they fly. Think of ribbons let loose into the wind, quiescent, fluid, unbiddable. Like the way Diana Ross got swept up at the beginning of The Wiz on that quiet New York street, away from the memory of fear, folded Toto up in her arms, and some part of her blood said yes to a hurricane, those killing winds bowing in fealty to her hands. So don't tell me Queen can't fly, can't confront a quake of unsteady bullets, turn towards Cuba, trust the weight of air, sail on firmament, root in black salt, hands outstretched in praise, ears ringing with mermaids' wails, ride light until she lands amidst a sea of Black folk, holding on to the promise of free. Won't we praise? Won't we sing? Won't we revel in the fantastic we birth?
Thank you. Dropping gems.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to refresh the question, but go on.
Yeah. So, you know, for starters, you know, I went to go and see Queen Slim, as every proud Black person does. You know, someone Black produces it, you show up, unless it's Medea. I know that's a personal thing.
That's a hot take.
You know, it's
louder.
But I'm rooted in that. So, you know, I went to see it and I was so excited, right? And so here you have this like movie that on so many levels, right? Like suspends reality. Spoiler alert for anyone who's watching who hasn't seen this yet, right? Like you have these Black folks who, you know, kill a cop in self-defense. are like riding in like the hooptiest of hoopties, right? Through the back roads of New Orleans in like clearly humid weather with nothing but like a fur coat and some stilettos, no hygiene bag for like 3 days, and they're still fresh and clean, right? Like,
Yeah.
and no one's run out of gas, like no one's found them. And they somehow get shot like at that final piece, like where they like just are about to enter that plane. I rebuke that, right? And
Okay.
my
I support your rebuke it. I co-sign this. Yes, I rebuke it as well. Come on, Lynn. Rebuke it with us.
my spirit rejected it, and it just wasn't. I mean, I think for me, like, it made me think about The People Could Fly, right? Because here, in The People Could Fly, you have these series of fables that are literally about folks who were enslaved, who are imagining getting up and just flying away. And so if we could do that, why not here? Why not in this one space? And so it felt really important to write that imagining because I feel like that's what we deserve. Like we got enough reality every single day. I don't need any more reality. I need to imagine a little bit about what could be.
That's so true. That is so true. I also think when reading your other poem, I'm always fascinated about how you manage to balance, what is horrible and what is tender. And the apocalypse poem. Would you mind reading that one real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Speculative fiction, apocalypse. Let's say the world doesn't end and you go to its edge. And yes, it is a real place, the ocean pounding and pounding at the gates, white foam winged and salty and lonely, sluicing and feral. Will you stay there on your hands and knees, looking for God? Count your infinite offenses into an unending rosary. Try to be good on a land you never really could claim kin to, tilling your lonely into a field. Or will you find another way? Make your own heaven. Dare to know the seed that makes you. Roam this world like Tina Turner in Mad Max, black, badassed, and silver haired, enthroned in your own bare skin, beguiled in your own story.
Love it.
So, how do you balance, the horrible with tenderness? How do you do that? Is your goal, or are you thinking about, well, how can I build out this world that makes me happy?
I think it's the latter for me, right? Like I think so many of us, I think, grapple with like the horrid and the tender, every single day. Whether or not it's like confronting, cycles of abuse that we witness in our own families, and at the same time understanding that even the person that like has caused great harm to us has also been a person that has in some way offered us tenderness, right? And I think sometimes we live, I think because violence has brutalized us so much, like we feel like maybe it's easier to try to exist within black and white. And I'm not necessarily interested in that. I'm interested in understanding the whole story, no matter how complicated it is.
Thank you. That's amazing. Yeah, I really feel that in your work.
To Mad Max in that poem, because it's like it just centers you right into like what we've been discussing, and that
you turn in that hairstyle.
Yep. I love it. Tina Turner by herself, badass, but then place her like in this apocalyptic jungle, without many other like black people, let's say, and she's basically like on the throne in that existed. That's just like I made that, puts us back into the mind of like Storm and just what the core of
claiming space and making it like, your own.
Honestly, which is
even an apocalypse.
Yeah, not just like black men, but everybody gets a seat at the table, or everybody gets a seat on the throne. Everybody gets their own. So that's just an awesome image to set that in.
I agree. I also think when I think of like the future and the world ending, who's doing my hair?
You bring up a very good point.
There's a Dark and Lovely poem by Yona Harvey and this thing, and I was like, girl, you going to spaceship, who's going to do your hair?
Yeah. You know, I worry about that, and I worry about eyebrows, right?
You know what?
Mhm.
Yes. I'm sorry, let me cut you off. You can you can bring on Terry.
Yeah, I can continue talking about hair and eyebrows if you want, but
These are very important things.
I would just like to say about that hair and eyebrows. That was an important question that became a conversation between me and another poet about if you become a vampire and your hair is natural, like what happens?
What happens?
Okay.
Can your scalp still absorb product at that point?
Exactly. Or can I mean like and say you're like, you're 100 years into being a vampire and you're like, I want to switch things up and get it locked. Will it lock? What will happen? I would like these questions addressed.
That's a poem. Boom.
It's getting
That's a poem. These are all valid questions, Lynn. You're giving us a look.
Valid
I would
questions.
think because you are a vampire that you have the ability to like style it yourself.
But that's just it. Our hair does so much. Does it go to just natural state, or what if what if you wanted
have
to?
A perm, it's perm forever.
Exactly.
You have a lock, lock forever.
Exactly.
Degrees.
I mean, they can walk into a hairdresser like anybody else if they want. They don't have to
turn back the next night. Like, so if I'm getting butt length, like knotless braids, and then I go to sleep, and then the next day I wake back up with this, I'm gonna be real mad.
Yeah.
Me too.
And what if you decondition your hair? There are issues here that need to be seriously discussed and dealt with. I'm just saying.
Please welcome to the stage, Terry Ellen Cross Davis. I'm sorry, we slowly got into a tangent, but a very worthy tangent. And Lynn, do you want to read her bio?
Yes.
I don't have it in front of me.
Terry Ellen Cross Davis is the author of A More Perfect Union, published last year by Mad Creek Press. Our first collection, Haint, from 2016 by Gaval Press, won the 2017 Ohioana Book Award for Poetry. She's a member of the Black Ladies Brunch Collective. She has received fellowships to attend Kavikanam, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Hedgebrook, and many more. Her work can be read in many anthologies and journals, including Not Without Our Laughter, Poems of Joy, Humor, and Sexuality, Bum Rush the Page, and many more listed. And she lives in Silver Spring, Maryland. So thank you for being with us. And you have a few poems in the anthology as well. So you, like myself and Gary, have like an extensive relationship with comics and superheroes and such. So would you like to talk about that before we get you to read something?
Sure. I think I've always had comic books as part of the periphery of my life, if not taking center stage at different points. My father read comic books, and so he had a few in the basement, and we would see those. I became a huge mythology fan, and so once you start going down the Greek and Roman mythology, then you get to the Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology, Thor, and so it just. And then I have a cousin, we call him the Professor, Rod K. Jones, who had all these comic books in bookcases at my grandmother's house. And I would read comic books whenever I go over there. And it's only now as an adult do I realize, oh, my parents were dropping me off so they could have some time to not have to deal with it. And so that's why I was over my grandmother so much. But I would love to read the origin stories. They had those like compendiums of all the I just wanted to know how and when people's powers would come in, because I was waiting for mine. And I just figured there had to be a reason, why I was going through the things I was going through as this like skinny, nerdy Black girl who loved comics and loved reading. And I was like, it means I have to have powers at some point. There has to be a trade-off.
Obviously.
Yes. Obviously. So, yeah. And I still read them. My daughter was 4 making wooden sculptures of Thermoscaya. I'm like, so my kids got indoctrinated very early. They love Marvel. They may dabble in DC.
Please let us hear your origin story.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's part of the I will go back and read this. I noticed before I even read this, I just wanted to say that one of the poems in here was actually inspired by an event that I did for my job. There's this poem about why Black women write horror stories, a not quite fictional survey. That she took that from Tana Anari Du, and that what was, what is, and what will be a cross genre look at Afrofuturism was an event that I put together for the Folger Shakespeare Library.
Look at that.
I was like, oh,
When you do it. When you do it.
Exactly. I was like, oh, I like that. So, the first poem I have in here is Origin Story, which I will say thank you all for pulling this together and making this call, because it unleashed everything in me to think, okay, I need to write about this now, and I want to write the world I want to create rather than the one I'm in, because this one needs help. And so Origin Story. It's a villanelle. Yeah, it's a villanelle. Origin Story. I want my powers to come in, I thought, looking at my aunt on her deathbed. Heartbreak is my world disassembling. Telekinesis, telepathy should blossom in my brain. Aren't mutant abilities trauma fed? I want my powers to come in. I could chase out the cancer that wants to break in. I could mold rage into racist piercing lead. It will be no heartbreak, their world disassembling. Ignorance is so often lobbed at my dark skin. Enduring mediocre white men deserves a godhead. I said I want my powers to come in. Stretch soup, balance books, what can't a Black woman mend? With powers, I could resurrect armies of murdered Black dead. Damn all this heartbreak, this world's disassembling. Class 5 mutant powers, I'm ready to lean in. I've stood over too many deathbeds. I want my powers to come in. See this heartbreak? This world's disassembling.
Beautiful.
I love this as like a workshop exercise, like for people who want to get into this work. Like everybody, like you said, everybody has an origin story, and everybody has powers. Let me say that. You do have powers, right? But maybe understated. I mean, everybody can't fly, everybody doesn't have super strength, but everybody has something. So that's a great thing to explore for folks that may be watching that are thinking that maybe I can write that type of poem as well. So, like,
yes, what is your orange story? And
exactly.
it can be fantastical. It can be irregular. It can be a combination of both. Are you good at tying your shoes? Put that in the poem. Like seriously, like true. Everyone has a skill set. You read your own S on your chest. Put that in the poem. Yeah, you're all beautiful and smiles in your own way.
Yeah, we had kind of a section like that in the anthology where we were seeing a lot of these poems that were kind of like creation poems or like origin poems. So they were really connecting and conversating with one another. So would you like to read your second or say some more about the origin poem?
Well, yeah, just that origin poem. Like I said, that was my thing. That was my addiction when I would go over to my grandmother's house, just to find out how people got their got their powers in and how it manifested. And just, who doesn't want that moment where you go from being, like nobody to somebody, you want that moment. You want that
flash. You want dramatic.
Exactly. And that's the other thing too, is you want all the hurt that you go through to have some reason. And that's the part about all of this. Is like, well, if I have to go through all this heartbreak, it better be because my powers are coming in. If I have to see another headline about another Black body on the ground, it better be because my powers are coming in. And that's that power. And it's that lack of power that makes you want it and crave it even more.
You better preach, girl. You better
preach. I know, right? Right up in here. Right up in here.
But it's like, and even even to the point where, like, when I had my first child, she was a very big baby. I started calling her an Amazon from the get-go, right? I was like, and that's why she loves Wonder Woman. That's why she built Thermosky, because it was like, listen, this is you. You can be strong. You can do all these things. It's awesome. The other poem I had in here was The Goddess of Anger. So thank you all again for taking that. So I guess I'll just read that now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I will just like to say, if someone wants to make a temple For the goddess of anger, I'm all in. I can tell you what she might want on her, display. If she wants you to burn something in the brazier, I'm here for it. The goddess of anger needs to have a place where she can come down and her wrath can be almighty. But the goddess of anger, did he touch you? Did he hit you with jagged words or closed fists? Did he laugh at you? Were you polite even then? Were you lava under the skin? Then let me in. Unsheath the dagger of me. You've tasted pain. Now let me master it. Let me in. I'll use the dust of his bones for tea. I'll rise, vengeful and caustic, a florid fury, steeped in so much seething. I'll make his eyes bleed. Let me in. I'll dissect him unflinchingly. A backhand slap, a rake of fingernails. I'll spit my small mercies. I'll dance on him in stilettos. Paint my toenails opie red while the blood congeals. Let me be your ignition point, your pitch, the whoosh of hot, sweet breath. I'm all your swallowed heat simmered into flesh. Let go of fear, of retribution. I, too, can lift burdens. Let go of decorum and shame. Ride rage until it bucks, then jump on it again. Damn it. Let me in.
You better let her in.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that poem, I was asleep and that voice said, let me in. And that's how I woke up. And that's how I wrote that poem.
Wow.
You obeyed.
I obeyed. I was like, okay, come on.
Okay. And in that poem, who are you trying to protect, do you think?
I'm trying to protect women. I told my son yesterday, I was like, I think it's like cancer or heart disease might be the number one killer of men. Men are the number one killer of women. So it's like, need to even that ground somehow. And it'd be nice if we had somebody who was out there looking out for us in a way, and looking out for all of us in this way.
Yeah, I'd like to put out there for those of you that are watching and you have questions, you can type them in the comments and we'll be glad to address them. So Terry, you have, I think, a series or a suite of those goddess poems. Like, what is it that you, or led you to start writing those? Or, are you just like writing to see where they would take you? So like, what's been your journey with the goddess poems?
Well, and it's in some ways it started back with the Greek mythology and loving that, and it has its heart too in my love of comic books and superheroes, because I was a big fan of the Uncanny X-Men, Chris Claremont days, and so all of that's all in the back of my head. The fertile ground of it is just they're always churning. But then I was at dinner with a poet, and she said, you should just make your own goddess, and I was like, oh, okay. And it was like I'm sad to say I almost needed someone to give me that permission. But once I got that permission, it was over. It's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. I want a goddess for this. I want a goddess for that. So yeah, there's a goddess of anger. There's a goddess of cleaning. Because I don't know about you all, but when you get into a good fury and you get to cleaning, oh God, it feels so good. Yeah, there's a goddess of lust because I'm a Scorpio, so all said. And and there's
you're putting our business out on the street.
I know. I think Lynn, you're a Scorpio, and Syed,
Gemini.
And you're
okay. Gemini.
So you're both sides. You got both sides.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But yeah,
plead the
fifth. Look. I just said the thing, you telling on yourself. You're telling on yourself right now. You're telling on yourself.
But I don't know.
But
you hit on something when you said giving yourself permission, and that's a big key, I think, to this work when you are writing like Afrofuturism, Black comics, or or any like poetry in general, but specifically for the subject matter we're talking about. I think it unlocks something when you start thinking of yourself in the future, or thinking of yourself as supernatural, or thinking of your ancestors who are over you and they're like watching you. I think that really like is a key to like unlocking something that is just greater than the situation we're in. Like we were talking about, like the deaths of like unarmed Black people by police, and it's like I don't have to stay in this place. I can travel outside of this. I can live outside of this, or this is not my end. So Syed, would you like to speak to that? Or do you have something to say?
Yeah. I mean, I will say, so, I think a lot of this kind of using these fables and these stories to help us travel to other spaces, I think has been tremendously necessary. I think for me, I think for all the reasons, Terry, that you just listed. And I think as we kind of continue to witness this collapse of like white supremacy and the potential threat that it holds for our own lives, going back to the stories that have lived on and been passed on in my family, right? About like, and my family has some random stories. Like, I have an uncle who says he was kidnapped by mermaids. My grandmother kept being visited by ghosts and jumbies, right? And I think it's been necessary to like go back to that. And like, actually, that's been a source of strength in writing, because it's like, as long as the fantastic is a part of my life, I have a bridge to get to where I want to go and believe that I have a right to, in a place where I can be seen as human, even if in this realm it's never possible.
Right. The psychic chains of America hold so much of us down.
Just thinking about literature, just thinking about the bluest eye in Percola, compared to how we think of ourselves now in Afrofuturism. What do you imagine would be our next step for us in literature? Where should we go to next? What do you want to go to next? It's for anyone. Yeah, Lynn, Syed, or Terry.
I still think it's just radical to imagine a future in which we are not empowered, but we are the power. I think that's just radical enough. And I like, I want space. So I think the blackness of space should have some sort of conversation with the melanin in our skin and say, okay, come on home. That'd be nice.
It's incredible what you can do when you're not compelled by the white gaze, when you're not thinking about, will this upset white people, or how will white people receive this, or will I be ostracized for this? It's when you're not, when you don't have that eye watching you, big brother like watching you, it's amazing like what you can accomplish or what you can imagine. And that's evidenced by hundreds of graphic novels out there, comics that aren't like Marvel and DC, that are like Black artists, trying to work out these things in like comic books and other areas, music, just other types of arts that are not, thinking about like why I won't be accepted if I do this, I think that's a key piece to it as well.
I think the thing that comes up for me, so just to name it, I got married about like 4 months ago. Thank you. Yeah. I like to do the little being married dance,
I'm single, so I gotta see it. What does it look like? What does it look like? Oh, okay.
Like that's the dance.
I understand.
I also like sometimes like to break into a conversation speaking as a married woman. That was a lot of fun. Because it's relevant. It's relevant, right? But it was really fascinating to be in this place in my life, right? Like where I'm with someone, I'm with my wife, and settling into this understanding that I don't have to come at you in a way or come with this mindset that you are out to destroy me, right? And actually you are fighting alongside with me, and I actually don't need to fight. I can sit in love. I can like welcome love in, right? And when I think about it, we always make a joke out of it, that line, who is it, Miss Sophia from Color Purple? All my life I had to fight. But that's all we've been doing is fighting, right? So like when I think about the work of Afrofuturism, for me, the work is beginning to understand, how do I, in this body as a big, Black, queer, cis woman, have the power to lay down my weapons and just be? And what would that world look like? Yeah, and it's hard. I'm just gonna say for myself, it's real hard. And I think there's a joy in trying to understand what that could look like.
That's a really good point. And we spend our lives walking in armor, mentally and physically, in many spaces, whether you're a woman walking alone, whether you're in a boardroom with other men doing a presentation, whether you're with your friends, or with your colleagues, you're always wearing a type of armor to protect who you really are. And I think looking forward to the future, not having to have that armor would be the best gift. Yeah.
And I think going back to the anthology, it's like this allows you to play. Like you can spend time with this. It's like over 250 pages of like art in like spaces where where you can, imagine yourself in other places, or like see how other people are writing about things. When I read this, or when I was looking at these poems, or when I got to hold it in my hand, I was thinking, the possibilities are like endless. Like you can spend like a lot of time with this and then come back and pick it up later, because I don't think it's something you can read in like one sitting. So it's a maybe not even one section in one sitting. So I think it's like to have like so many writers like all of us here, and then more people, we're all bringing like our own origins, like we were saying earlier, to this space. And we learned that I think we're kind of the same, but we're also very different. So I think that people can see how, it all amalgamates and comes together, like, making us, not a monolith, but also like how we have shared experiences.
Right? I agree.
Yeah. The diversity in it. And I will say, when I got it, I was so amazed at how pretty it was.
I know, right?
I was like, look at these pictures. And the pictures of what did it. I was just like, oh, the glossiness. And I was just like, it felt like a graphic novel, and it was like, so there's something, I was really excited about that. And it just, and I don't, just having the images opposite some of the poems really just did a number. And it just, it does this way of just unlocking all the potential of what you can imagine and just letting it go. And I've already set my son to sit down and read a couple things, so it just, I appreciate this so much, because there's a future out there that we can't even dare to dream in the reality of now. And I love that this gives us that moment to say, okay, let's think about that future. Let's start dreaming it, and let's let go of the psychic chains of America and white supremacy. Let that go, and let's be free, and let's fly. All our people could fly, so why not?
Why not? Why
not?
Just thinking of the African Museum in DC, I remember going there and seeing the George Clinton's ship. There, they have the ship there, and I was like, this book should be in the ship. This book should be in the ship, because it's a perfect pairing. You gotta make it happen. I don't know how, but we should.
I'm down for that, and if there's like a mission to do it legally, I'm here for
it. Same.
Any questions for us as editors, you guys?
Just once you finish this, did you feel like you were done, or do you feel like there's more?
I think clearly it's like a jumping off point for a lot of different. I think personally, I would like to go more into like the theory of this work, the poetics of Afrofuturism, and establish like the trends and characteristics of it. So there is more work to come, and not just like a one-off book. You know what I mean? Or not just well, I'll write this one poem and tuck it into my my collection. So like giving people like we said permission or license to write more of these poems. So I think that there's a scholarship to this, and I think that there's a lot of articles and essays that could be written. I mean, there are, but not necessarily about poetry. So that's kind of where I think I'm particularly headed with this work. And so, I mean, we could have like volume after volume after volume, because I think people are still gonna write like, poems, Afrofuturism poems, superhero poems, Black comic poems. I think they're out there now. I mean, they're ones that we obviously haven't, included in this particular anthology. For example, I was reading Danica Kelly's The Renunciations, and just her poems about the Oracle. Those are like, explicitly Afrofuturistic, of course. And so, they're there and they're still being written as we speak. So it'll be fun to see like what comes of those as we go forward. It's a long answer.
For me, I was thinking of, so when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in libraries, and that's how I discovered books. So I discovered different worlds, imagining comics. So after the book was done, I was imagining this in the library, and the kid was able to read this book. So my thinking was, well, I want kids and people my age or younger to discover this book and start writing themselves. So I was thinking of this book in schools. I was thinking of this book, how can we make this book accessible to others so that it's not up on a pedestal that anyone can read it at any time. So that was my main thing after we finished. Then I started thinking about the Pussycats, the cartoon. And I was like, Valerie, I want to know more about her. The Black girl Valerie, I mean, she never, there's got to be more to her story. So I think she could be something. It won't be about Valerie versus Pussycats, because she was one of the original like Black cartoons, and no one really writes about her. So I kind of want to know more about her. So she may be on my docket soon.
Do you remember the Black girl in Dungeons and Dragons in that cartoon?
Yes.
I gotta go back. Okay.
Yeah. Lynn, I think we were watching the same cartoons.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I wish I knew her name.
I know.
Voices. Those cartoons, I want to give them voices, because the Jetsons, we ain't there, Black folks. No.
Yeah.
So I want to give these cartoon characters who are Black, I want to give them voices. What are you doing? What are you thinking? What is your day like? I want to see that.
I do have like one quick question that feels very important and urgent in this moment. So as you think about this anthology, if y'all were to put together a playlist to match with it, like what is one song that you're like, this is the jam that you need to play as you read it?
Yes.
Flashlight.
Great question.
Flashlight.
Yes.
May I direct you to our syllabus?
It's a little bit
right, but I need a Spotify playlist.
Yes, Spotify playlist.
I know. Don't make me do this work. Come on now.
That's what the people need. The people need a Spotify playlist.
And I know, Lynn, I know you got to put Outkast on there, AT-Aliens.
I gotta do that. Yeah. Funkadelic. Missy Elliott, Super Duper. We gotta have.
Oh yeah.
Sunrise.
All of it. All of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you could even go with oh my gosh. Yeah.
Monet. Yeah, we could like.
Yes.
It could be a whole thing.
Did you say it could be healthy?
It could be a whole thing.
Whole thing. I was like, okay, yes.
It could be healthy too, but it could be a whole thing. Question from the chat: will there be a volume 2? I don't know, Lynn. Will it be a volume 2? I mean, volume 1 just came out literally 3 months ago, so I don't know. we haven't talked about a volume 2.
This question comes up like every time we have like these type of events.
I know, people are like, what's next? I'm like,
it sounds like it's what the people want.
Give us time.
Yeah.
The answer is we don't know yet, but we're open to anything.
Yeah. Breakbeat Post is like on volume 5 now, 4 or 5. So why not?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, especially with Marvel getting as big as it is now. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Speaking of which, and I know we're running out of time, it's great to see that more stories are being written by, I think Marvel and DC are capitalizing on like
Yeah.
diversity right now. And the thing that I love it, but in my Scorpion pessimistic mind, I'm thinking like, is this just trendy right now? Hopefully it's not like, you know, just because, oh, this is hot right now, let's just throw all the superheroes at them, you know, Black, Latino, LGBTQ, etc., you know, because that's what's hot right now. But, you know, it's great to see, you know, you can't even keep up with them all. It's just so many like different presentations out there. But you're going to read Elsa's question, Cynthia.
Yes, I think it's a question we can sort of end on. How do you work to create cohesion within your collections of poetry? I feel like right now, in my writing, I have a lot of poems that are very, very different. I think it's questions for all of us who have books. So, you know, I'm going to throw it to Saida.
Yeah, sure. I would say get a really good friend that knows your work. Wink, wink, Terry. Who will
Get a Terry.
Get a Terry. Get a Terry.
Or get
Terry. Near you. A shelf near you. Get a Terry.
Yeah. And I think the other piece is like, you know, it's okay to have like, I mean, this is like, I think it's one of those joy as a state thing. Think of your poetry, your book as a state, right? A state can hold a lot, but you got to look for those thematic pieces that are connecting it all together, right? And that's like the piece that feels crucial to me. But get you a Terry.
Store near you. Terry, take it away.
You know, someone tweeted today that they were actually like I'm sick of the idea that all collections have to have this overarching theme and this arc, and how come they just can't be random and like, you know, miscellany as they used to call it, you know? So there's a thought too for that, but yeah. I think the poems do have to talk a little bit to each other, at least be in the same conversation.
Yeah.
They got to be able to text each other.
Exactly. And even random text at like 2 a.m. is fine. Yeah.
You up text.
Exactly. Yeah. You up? You crying over the pandemic too? What's going on? Yeah.
Hey, big head.
Take it away.
Oh gosh. You alone?
But I will say this, Lynn, I am really, really ready for Riri. I'm really ready for Riri as Iron. I'm ready for Riri.
Yes, I am too. I am too. She's supposed to. I'm giving away too much, but she's supposed to debut in the next Black Panther film, which is gonna be awesome.
And I heard she's at the same high school that Mary Jane is going to be going to, in the multiverse. Yeah, that's what I heard. I just you know, collect information.
And I was thinking about this the other day. It's funny how, you know, Iron Man's daughter, who I think is in the comics, and I think she does emerge as like a superhero, but I think it's interesting that Riri Williams, who emerges as the new Iron Heart, is her name.
Iron Heart.
But they didn't go with like just going for the film, didn't just go with his daughter, because you know that's, you know, how origins work, right? My parents died, and I'm going to avenge my parents, yada yada. But it's interesting that they went in that direction, and I kind of see them like clashing if they do eventually. You know, well, he's my daddy, but so how can you be? How can you steal his technology or whatever? But I love that they're going in a different direction.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah. But I guess we can end on that and say that this has been a fun conversation. You all are hilarious. I can't wait to see you in person eventually. And
thank you guys for coming. We appreciate you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Busboys and Poets for allowing us to have this space and for hosting us.
Thank you. We absolutely loved having you. I had such a fun time. I loved all of the discussions happening. So yeah, I just want to thank you guys one more time. It was fantastic, and hopefully we'll see you back with us soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us, everybody. Please be sure to check in on our YouTube and Facebook to see the events that we have coming up and on our Eventbrite page. For now, have a good night. Goodbye.